Welcome to the NFL Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's out on the East Coast. We are back for week 2. Not too bad in the first week here. I went down minus 1.8, I should say. Nate did fine there, 2-1, 0.8 units up on the season. So as a collective, down a unit after week 1, but I feel really good about these bets. We got a little bit more info. Obviously, week 2, we're still feeling things out here. Not a ton of data to use, but we will do our best. And I like I said, feel pretty good about our picks. So definitely want a quick reminder about subscribing to that page so you can continue to follow along. A lot of really good NFL content coming out right now on the YouTube channel for thelines.com. So you do not want to miss that from start to finish throughout the week. Nate, let's go ahead and get into our winning ways. Talk about your first play here for week 2.
Yeah, I'll go Jayden Daniels, the passing and rushing yards. 250 is where you can find the best price at MGM there, or the best number as well. I think you should just take the passing if you're going to separate these. Although, I mean, the dude is definitely capable of going for 70, 80 rushing yards and carrying your bet. As we saw, 88 rushing yards in his debut. That was probably a bit of rookie hot feet. To just get out of the pocket and do what he knows how to do, because, you know, the passing reads were not working for him because absolutely befuddled by Todd Bowles and a really talented Bucs defense. Now he gets the worst roster in the NFL. I think maybe not even the worst roster, but the worst like position group by position group. If you exclude like their one great player, like they got Dexter Lawrence, so maybe we won't run up the middle. And you can just attack this Giants defense anywhere else. Like this is definitely like going back to the college level of play that Jayden Daniels is more accustomed to. He probably looked the best of these 3 rookie quarterbacks that just were thrown right to the fire, right? Bo Nix played well if Sean Payton scripted him exactly what to do, and then it just fell apart. Caleb Williams looked like he had no idea what was going on. But Jayden Daniels, yeah, he's a talented dude. He has 1 game under his belt. This is more about the matchup, right? I mean, they allowed Sam Darnold to go 11 for 11 right off the bat, and I can't think of how many people want to dump on Sam Darnold as like not starter worthy quarterback. So I mean, he had absolutely no issues against this Giants defense. Terry McLaurin, who is not really heard from at all against the Bucs because they've got some damn good corners there and elite safeties. He kills the Giants, as you know very well, right? Average 87 yards per game in his career at 13 per catch. And his props are really low, down to 50 yards or 3.5 catches. Like those, also like Jayden Daniels to maybe bust a rush of 15 yards or more here. Because, yeah, I mean, he's just an electric athlete. Like, he's going to figure this out sooner rather than later. He's also the oldest of these quarterbacks, or maybe he's the same age as Bo Nix. But the point is he's got a ton of games under his belt at the college level, and he's going to figure out the NFL level against maybe the worst team in the league.
Yeah, I really like the Terry McLaurin stuff that you mentioned. Also, just crapping all over the Giants for like 3 minutes. It's what the bet's predicated on. I don't even have any problem with it. I was happy to take the Vikes last week, actually. But yeah, interesting also, just because we aren't talking about this Bucs game this week, 4 starting defensive backs now out for week 2 for TB, which is going to be a problem because that is the strength of their defense, as you mentioned, and a big reason why, Jayden Daniels probably had a lot more trouble passing last week than he certainly will this week. And I really like the Terry McLaurin stuff as well. Like you said, I think it's too low. I'm glad that he had a bad game last week. And it was almost somewhat predictable that you were going to be able to take an under on him in week 1 and an over on him in week 2 with the disparity between the defenses and the pass coverages that he's playing. So love Jayden Daniels. Love the rushing numbers. I was a little scared last week at 39.5 yards rushing to take it for Daniels, which looks hilarious because he had that in like the second quarter. But I think it's going to, I don't know that it's going to change too much. I think you're still probably going to get maybe a third of these yards via the rush for him. So I think it's good to add the rushing on there. I don't think I would even take the 192.5 by itself, to be honest. I think he needs a little help from that rush. And you could take that by itself, though, if you wanted it. So that said, I'm going to go to another rushing quarterback and the man that Jayden Daniels is compared to, actually. So a nice little transition to Lamar Jackson, former MVP, under 29.5 pass attempts for Lamar in this one. And I really like this based on the game script. This is just a smash spot for the Ravens. It opened at 7.5, got bet up to about 9.5, and now it's back down to about 9. I think you can still get a good number there for him. But the point is that the Ravens are favored by more than a touchdown for good reason. You've got the revenge narrative. This is a team that cannot fall 0-2 after last week. And so I think they're going to come out and put it on this Raiders squad, which just looked terrible last week in so many ways. Antonio Pierce looked confused. So all of that's to just support the bet because it really is predicated on game script. You look at 41 pass attempts for him last week against KC. They were trying to come back the whole game, right? They really were trying to make sure that they could stay in that game with them the whole time. And that was against a pretty good KC pass defense. But this Raiders one is way better in terms of its pass defense versus its rush defense. Not necessarily a better pass defense than KC, which is really, really good, but it is a much better rush pass defense than rush defense. And that rush should be a lot more open. I'll just start with that because last year they were 24th in rushing defense success rate, 14th in pass D success rate, and they've only gotten better with shoring up the defensive backs this season. Then you look at rush D DVOA, that was 17th, and they were 8th in pass D DVOA, which is a reason that some people were taking some overs on their win totals for the Raiders, but that was an atrocious week 1, and I'm not sure they have the coaching. But most importantly, for Lamar when he's up, doesn't need to pass the ball. He already wants to run the ball, as we know, and Monken is fine with him doing that. But when they did win last year by at least 7 points, that was in 11 games, he went under this pass attempt number in 2 of those. He only went over in 2 of 11. He went under in 9 of the 11 games that was the case. They also won by 9 points 10 times, went under 9 of those games, right? So if they do win by 9 to 10 points, it's a 95% hit rate that he does not need to pass the ball 30 times. I think we'll just run right back to that, and they'll finally get a little bit of usage out of Derrick Henry now that they'll just want him to get a few more touches in this game after paying him so much money last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's that's kind of the thing I'm following with our running backs is what was their contract again? Because you see exactly how much work they get based on that contract. But yeah, Lamar, there's a lot of ways this game script can unfold where he doesn't attempt 30 passes. Like that's just not the Ravens game, even with this Todd Monken offense. Like I expect Derrick Henry to have a much better game. I wasn't quite bullish enough to take his number against Max Crosby and co. Because I mean, with Christian Wilkins in there, like that line is no joke. But yeah. Lamar he'll take off more often than he'll throw. So let me stick to the toilet bowl here, though, down in our nation's capital, and go with Malik Nabers on the other side of the ball. 5.5 receptions is plus money. No problem with the yards too. Is about 66, which is what he basically wound up with. After getting shut out in the first half by the Vikings. I mean, basically Daniel Jones barely had positive passing yards because Brian Flores just completely stifled him with whatever scheme he cooked up. And look, we touched on it with the Giants defense. This Washington defense is actually worse, at least by the numbers. Last year was the worst pass defense in the league, and they did not cover themselves in glory in week 1, giving up an 80% completion rate to Baker Mayfield. Their 2 corners, Manny Forbes and Ben St. Juste, just not great numbers. Last year, this year, any year, 100% catch rate against poor Manny Forbes there. So I think Nabers, wherever he lines, he will be lining up more often on the outside, and that's so he gets to run against those guys. Only a 14% slot rate in the opener, which I mean, I don't know if that was dumb from Dayball or not, because I thought this guy was supposed to be like a target hog out of the slot and just give Danny Jones, like, it doesn't matter if we can't protect him, like just get this dude the ball. This is our dude. In any case, I mean, he's playing 100% of the snaps, 100% route participation. They've clearly funneled him targets in the second half after, making Wan'Dale Robinson, I guess, was hogging all those slot looks. And they were like, you know what? We kind of have a better option here. And so, yeah, I mean, the time is now. Just start feeding him from starting in the first half, and you won't really get a better matchup. You might not get a price this low if Nabers is able to stay healthy and just kind of soak up targets in this offense.
100%. And that'll probably be what he turns into. The Giants don't have the offensive line to wait for Nabers to get down the field. They probably will start using Wan'Dale a little bit more as the deep threat, maybe some Jalen Hyatt. I don't even want to go through the wide receiver core of this team. You're 100% right, though. Nabers is it. And he already looks like actually the best receiver out of a very, very talented wide receiver class. It's been 1 week. We'll give Marvin Harrison Jr. a bit of time. We'll give Romeo Duns some time. But really already, like, maybe just out of necessity, Nabers looks like the guy because there's literally nobody else that most people have heard of on this Giants receiving core this year. So and Daniel Jones, look, like there are moments, and if you, like you were saying about the slot, another good thing is not as deep of a throw. We don't have to rely on his accuracy to the sidelines, which is just making me nauseous as a Giants fan. So get him into the slot, like you said, and you're going to have a lot more success with Malik. Won't you be my neighbors? Let's go to a man who has frustrated his fantasy owners for years now. That is Najee Harris. And I'm going to take him for a positive prop here, though, Nate. I'm taking him for an anytime touchdown in a game against Denver. We'll come to that in a second. That is plus 195, though, on DraftKings. I've got a half a unit on that play. Anytime I'm getting these anytime touchdowns or, over half a touchdown for 2-1 odds or better, likely going to keep it to a half a unit or less, depending on how long of a shot is. But it's still wild, like that we're getting 2-1 odds for Najee Harris, the lead back in an offense that is going to be run heavy with Justin Fields at quarterback once again, against the Denver Broncos. And also Jaylen Warren is banged up. Not that Jaylen Warren would have even taken goal line touches from Najee Harris, but it's just an even more sure fact that like Najee Harris is going to probably be there for even more of the game. And that was the case last week as well. You did see Jaylen Warren in on much more of a pass catching when it came to opportunities, when it came to opportunity share, as opposed to just snap share, which you might see a little bit more even snap share between he and Jaylen Warren. But the opportunity share as far as run game goes was still like 75% in the favor of Najee. So you have that. You're talking about a Denver defense that just allowed 103 yards and 20 carries to Kenneth Skywalker, who's already hurt again, which is frustrating for people, I'm sure. But they gave up a tutty to Kenneth as well. And last year's Denver's defense might get harped on a little bit too much. I mean, it hasn't gotten better, by the way. It's pretty much the same unit here. But it gets harped on too much that like, okay, they were awful historically at times because of the fact that they lost a game that gave up 70 points and all that, right? Like what was 6-7 touchdowns, a couple, like 4 of them rushing, etc. Achane and Mostert went crazy. So that did inflate the numbers. It's not like they were really good even after that. They were still ended 30th in rush defense DVOA. And the adjusted line yards. This is something I like to look at with once you get down into the goal line and you really want to know how much push a defensive line is getting. Denver was 31st, second to last in D-line adjusted line yards, meaning they're not moving the offensive line in the backwards at all. At best, they're staying neutral, and most of the time they're getting pushed back a bit. And that's really all you need here for Najee to just fall forward. It's a big reason why the Broncos allowed the 7th most red zone touchdowns and a ton of rushing touchdowns as well, about 12 of them to running backs. So this is a good spot to hit Najee, who should remain at about 2-1 or better, I would imagine, at like in tough matchups. But this is not a tough matchup, so I think it's a good shot at 2-1.
Yeah, definitely. Denver's run defense, one of the worst in the league, getting pushed around by Seattle's offensive line, which I think is bottom 5. And now Pittsburgh continues to improve on that side, and they have Arthur Smith in there who's going to be bullheaded trying to run the football. Jaylen Warren being injured is key here. I know he's not necessarily going to get like a plunge inside the 5, but yeah, I mean, Najee's day here. Maybe you want to play him in DFS and hope he gets multiple touchdowns. Yeah. I'll close it out with another running back, Josh Jacobs, over 66.5 rushing yards, full unit on that. I think you put a half unit on him to get a touchdown as well. Just for starters, the guy is making $48 million over 4 years. So that projects to how much workload for a running back? 75%. That's what he got in week 1, even though his backup, Emmanuel Wilson, played pretty well. He goes for 1684 against a stout Eagles front. Like I always respect the Eagles rush defense, especially when they have a bad pass defense behind it. And now it's kind of the opposite here with the Colts. They're about average everywhere, but they did just get steamrolled for 159 by Joe Mixon and the Texans. And Matt LaFleur ain't no dummy. He's definitely going to borrow some of those concepts and use that toss crackback that was just like easy 8 yards every time, basically down the stretch. As they try to protect Malik Willis, which I kind of buried the lead there. It's saying look, how do you want to bet this game with Malik Willis out? We don't have anything up yet for the Packers receivers because, we could definitely look at some unders there because this dude ain't not Jordan Love and he's not going to attempt that many passes. They'll probably try to protect his potential to go down the field or get sacked because he has zero pocket presence, even though he is fast. So I think maybe use him more as kind of a read option quarterback, get Jacobs the ball a lot. And I just think Jacobs probably good for 80 plus yards if this is going well for the Packers. They have a good offensive line. They're at home, and pretty trendy pick right at +3 to handle business at home, even though they're missing their guy under center.
Which is weird to me. I mean, you said Malik Willis isn't Jordan Love. Malik Willis isn't even Will Levis. Like he's not anybody. I am shocked. There has got to be a better option. I mean, especially from a guy who just walked in the door 3 weeks ago. But maybe LaFleur saw something that he liked in Willis. That would be my only understanding of it, because I mean, there's scrap there. I mean, there's a ton of guys I could name that are available that would be better options in my opinion than Malik Willis. I don't think that's an NFL quarterback. Like you said, that's probably the lead for this Jacobs play here. And I don't know. I mean, Willis is so bad that like I'd be terrified to take the points even at home for Green Bay against what I think is a good team. Like I think Indianapolis is going to be a good team this season. I was actually waiting to see what happened with them before I bet on them for a futures bet. By the way, as well, because I do think they're likely to win the division, but I thought we'd get better juice after they might lose in week 1 to the Texans, which came to fruition. So that might be a decent play. But I want to ask you a quick question before I move away from this game. Is Jayden Reed even worth starting in fantasy leagues this year? Is there any, like, are you just done with Packers receivers? Like, there's nobody you would take an over on or anything
Jayden
like
Reed
that
is the guy I would stick with in terms of a play, because he also gets a lot of work. He's like skinny Debo. Like he's getting a lot of jet sweeps and end arounds, and he's going to get funneled the easy targets. It's the other guys that if I was going to fade them, they'd be like, Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs. Willis is not going to be able to get the ball down the field to those guys.
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. So I'm starting Jayden Reed. All right. My last play here is one that I really like. And it's only right now, I believe I need to shop it a little bit more. Use that odds shopper on the thelines.com as well for NFL. They did a nice little overhaul. It's a really solid tool right now, but that is something I'm going to look at. But right now on DK, you can get Jacksonville versus Cleveland total turnovers over 2.5. It's -130. I don't think I unearthed some sort of hidden gem that was mispriced. I just think it's still worth it up to like -150 for this game to have 3 turnovers in it from 2 incredibly turnover prone teams who also force a ton of turnovers, right? And Cleveland is going to be usually sort of like the leader and the torchbearer when it comes to we turn the ball over a ton and we force you to turn it over. You're going to see a lot of weird 32 to 18 games with us because there's going to be some weird stuff happening. So with that in mind, just looking at the offenses from last season and the first couple of weeks, if you don't have any serious changes to the roster, I'm fine with using it as at least a starting point from 2023 data. And it's pretty stark for these teams. It would be wild to see them make that big of a change, right? So Cleveland had the most turnovers in the league at 37. That was in part because Deshaun Watson played 6 games and had 9 of them, 5 fumbles and 4 INTs in his 6 games last year. And then in week 1 already, he had 3 by himself, 2 INTs and 1 fumble that would have gotten us to over 2.5 last week against the boys, right? Then you look at Jacksonville on offense. We know Trevor Lawrence is capable of the INT, as he was leading the league in that just a couple seasons ago. Also had 14 once again last year on top of 12 fumbles lost. And Travis Etienne fumbled in week 1, and that's something to keep an eye on because Tank Bigsby looked good. And if he does come out and fumble another one, we might be looking at not necessarily a changing of the guard, but if Etienne is 1A to 2, might be 1A, 1B a little bit more with Tank looking really much better this season. And Etienne, known for having those fumble problems, we'll see if he has another one. It's a bit of a mental thing, as we know. Then you look at the defenses. Cleveland forced the 5th most turnovers last year, Jacksonville the 10th. And you're talking about Jim Schwartz's defense here in Jacksonville. I do think he's going to live inside of Deshaun Watson's jersey in this game, as we know he's going to be sending the house as consistently as he can. And he knows that Watson has played 13 games with this Brown squad in 3 seasons of being in Cleveland. That is not enough games to really feel comfortable with a receiving core that has also changed and was pretty overhauled last year outside of Amari Cooper. So I'm going to continue to feel like Watson doesn't have any, he's not in sync with his offense. He doesn't have the reps there still. And then for Trevor Lawrence and Etienne, if I just get 1 turnover from those guys, I'm very confident that Cleveland is going to get at least 2 turnovers. We might even see a 3rd by themselves.
And to be clear, if there's a special teams turnover, that does still count towards your total, right? I mean, if somebody muffs a punt,
100%.
Okay. Chance of thunderstorms, so that would definitely help you out. Trevor Lawrence is apparently terrible holding on to the ball. If it gets a little bit wet, I could see Myles Garrett stripping him. Definitely, that could be a turnover right there. And Deshaun Watson, continue to do his thing, turning the ball over and being the highest paid, no longer the highest paid
No
quarterback,
longer. Yeah.
but maybe the worst quarterback in the league who's making that much.
I hope he sent a note to Tua thanking him as soon as he signed that contract so that he could get out of the spotlight with that. But that is neither here nor there. We are complete here with our week 2 picks, looking to improve on these units here, pick up a bunch in with our 6 picks. So definitely make sure to subscribe to the page. Also jump in those comments. Let us know who you guys are betting on. Enjoying the conversation with some of you guys throwing out your plays for NFL. And until we see you next, happy betting.